Appreciate all of you joining us, and welcome to the Fumble Sports Week 16 preview show. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just excited about another week of fantasy football action, gambling action, and the like. But some matchups I'm really excited about include some playoff implications. One of the things I want to make sure we're aware of going into tonight's show is what the playoff standings look like. Number one seed in the AFC is the Buffalo Bills, but on the NFC side, the Eagles, are they going to have Jalen Hurts against the Cowboys in their big matchup? Really excited about what we're seeing. If the season ended right now in the AFC, it would be the Bills in the 1 seed, Kansas City playing the Dolphins in the Tyreek Hill Bowl, the Bengals playing the Chargers in a 3-6 matchup that would pit Joe Burrow against Justin Herbert in a matchup of great young quarterbacks, and the Tennessee Titans versus the Ravens, which could see Derrick Henry going up against that great Ravens run defense. On the other side, in the NFC, Eagles, like I said, have that number 1 seed. As for the 2 seed, it is the Minnesota Vikings. They would play the Washington Commanders right now in a matchup that would pit Kirk Cousins against his former franchise. In the 3-6 matchup, it would be the 49ers against the Giants in an interesting quarterback matchup of Brock Purdy and Daniel Jones. Who would have seen that as a playoff matchup at the beginning of the season? And of course, in that last matchup, the 4-5 matchup, the one that Fox is praying happens, it would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the Dallas Cowboys. That would have everyone and their mother turning out to watch. I'm sure the NFL is hoping that one turns out. Thank you so much all for joining us. Hope you're settling in. Should be a great show tonight as we go on YouTube from our Metaverse studio and of course on Twitter Spaces. We're going to talk a lot about the NFL Week 16. But, of course, let's start by welcoming in those who will give us some analysis. Adam, who does such a great job for us, at Spotter AJ. Adam, how you doing this evening?
Yeah, really good. A lot happening. Like you mentioned, full slate of games this weekend. National Signing Day for college football tomorrow, so hopefully my Badgers can do some damage so we can catch Bleece's Wolverines here in the next year or two. And then Sunday, Packers Dolphins against Lopes Dolphins, and then it leads right into the Bucs Celtics. So a lot going on this weekend. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that Bucs-Celtics game. Celtics have been struggling of late. Bucs look like the one team in the East that could actually take them on. But we'll leave that to another time to talk NBA. Another great part of our team is Darius Terafinen. You can check him out at Dennis Terava. He does a great job for us with our daily fantasy plays. Dennis, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, guys. Glad to be here. Hopefully the majority of the listeners have advanced in their fantasy leagues and they're still alive in the playoffs. Looking forward to catching up and talking a little bit about last weekend's games, what we saw and how they influence our picks for this week. Definitely hope that the Jets can turn things around. And I know they'll be one of the first matchups we talk about. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll be getting to the Jets in just a second. But before we do, want to make sure I shout out Lope, who does such a great job for us, at Lope Dog. That's Dog, D-A-W-G. Lope, how you doing this evening?
Doing really good. Excited for these matchups. And as we always say, one thing to factor in this week is going to be the weather. There's going to be a cold front. There's going to be some games that feels like negative degree temperature.
I love Lope bringing the weather report. I was going to go in the same direction. If you want to get great weather reports for NFL games, one site I would highly recommend is NFLweather.com. They don't just have weather at kickoff, but throughout the entirety of the game, each quarter, and that way you know what to expect. One of the ways in which I got ahead of some of the action last week was that Miami Dolphins-Buffalo Bills game. People were talking about snow the entirety of the week, but on NFLweather.com, they did a great job of saying by game time, there really wouldn't be a lot of snow. It would just come late in the second half. They got that one dead on. So if you are worried about weather impacting your bets or fantasy plays this week, I would definitely recommend it. Make sure you also follow us at Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at Sports Fumble on Twitter. And I encourage everyone who's joining us on Twitter and on YouTube to tweet out the space. Let others know about it. It's that time of giving throughout the NFL season and around the world. So make sure you give the gift of good fantasy information and good NFL information to your friends and family. Let's start this conversation around NFL Week 16, and it starts with Thursday night football between the 6-8 Jacksonville Jaguars and the 7-7 New York Jets. This one's going to kick off at 8:15 on Amazon Prime. Where I see it, this is a pick'em, a straight-up pick'em in this one. Over-under is set at 38 points. Some gambling trends before we go around and get everyone's analysis for this game. The favorite is 5-2 against the spread in the last 7 meetings between the Jaguars and Jets, while the home team is 4-0 against the spread in the last 4 meetings between the two. The Jets are 6-0 against the spread in their last 6 games following an against the spread loss, while the over is 5-1 in the last 6 meetings in New York, and the over is 5-1 in the Jets' last 6 Thursday night games. We'll start with Adam. What are your thoughts about this game between the Jaguars and Jets?
So it looks like Zach Wilson will be back at quarterback for the Jets. He did throw for 317, 2 touchdowns and a pick last week against a bad Detroit defense, but it just didn't seem like he played that well at all. Jacksonville's got 2 straight wins, but they are 2-5 on the road. But their pass defense is ranked 29th in the league. So I think Wilson can get just enough done on offense. I'm going to look at the Jets defense in this one. I think they're the better of the two, and I think they did a really nice job last week against a pretty explosive Detroit offense. So at home, I like the Jets, and they're going to have to keep Jacksonville in check because Jacksonville has the last 2 games against Tennessee put up 36. And against Dallas, it did put up 40. So Jacksonville is rolling in here hot, and this is a must-win game. But I'm going to lean to the Jets defense here at home and take the Jets.
Loeb, from a gambling standpoint, how do you feel about this game?
I like what Adam said. Even though Jacksonville's rolling in hot and off a big win, these young teams tend to be up and down. The home teams won each of the last 5 games between them. So I'm with him on the Jets, and I'm also liking the under. I think the Jets defense is a real problem, and as good as the Cowboys defense is that Trevor Lawrence made look pedestrian, I think the Jets just offer new challenges, especially up front, and can do a lot of different things. So I'm in agreement. I'm going to go with the Jets.
We talked a moment ago about weather could potentially impact a number of games of NFL Week 16. There is supposed to be rain for this Thursday night game between the Jaguars and Jets. Dennis, is there anyone you feel good about from a fantasy or DFS standpoint? And how does the rain impact your thinking? Does that impact it at all?
So if setting the rain aside, I have hesitation embracing anybody going up against the Jets defense. But to be fair, I really can't get a pulse for the Jaguars. I don't know what to expect every week. Every time I count them out, they suddenly go off. We saw Jones last week with 3 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence also helping a lot of teams in the fantasy playoffs. So with the rain factored in, it makes me even more reluctant to embrace any particular Jaguar. That being said, if you don't have any other choice, there's nobody that you can pivot to. I understand if you want to stay with the hot hand. In terms of on the Jets side of the ball, this is not supported by any statistics, purely just from the fan perspective. I'm wondering if they give James Robinson the opportunity for some revenge, and especially with Zonovan being dinged up. That's the only person for myself that I might consider from a DFS perspective. Otherwise, it's a stay away unless you want to take the Jets defense.
Obviously, I love the Jets defense this year. They've played so well, and they continued to last week against the Lions. I do kind of like Garrett Wilson, and I would recommend Zach Wilson. If you need a quarterback off the waiver wire, you may want to pick him up. He's 6-2 in his starts this year. He played pretty well last week. He might be a nice play. I think the rain isn't going to be as big a factor in this one. The Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one, at least at the moment, is the over. I really like the over. The trends kind of speak to that between the meetings between the two teams in New York, Jets on Thursday Night Football. And I actually think there's going to be a bit more offense in this one than what's expected, in part because I think Zach Wilson will play slightly better than people expect. So I like the over. I would buy the 1.5. That's over 36.5 points. As for the pick'em, I'm waiting to see where the public money comes down. The trends suggest that the team that's favored is the one to go with. They also say the home team's the one to go with. I do lean slightly towards the Jets, this being a short week, Jets being the home team. I think the Jaguars coming off the high of beating the Cowboys might also set up for a letdown while the Jets need to fight their way back into the AFC playoff picture. So for a number of reasons, I'm leaning Jets. I'm not putting my money on it now. I'm waiting to see how public money pushes this right before kickoff, but definitely something I'm considering is Jets on the money line or Jets to cover if I get that lucky and I can get the points. Appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you follow us at Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at Sports Fumble on Twitter. This is a crucial week, so if you've got fantasy football questions, make sure you join us. We have a number of TikTok lives throughout the week, but we also will have a number of YouTube sessions as well, so make sure you're following and subscribing. Saturday at 1 p.m., the 10-4 Cincinnati Bengals play the 7-7 New England Patriots on CBS. New England obviously coming off maybe the most embarrassing loss of the season with what went down in Las Vegas. They are a 3.5-point underdog to a Bengals team that beat and bloodied Tom Brady in the second half of that game against the Bucs. The over-under for this one is set at 41.5 points. Some gambling trends before we go to everyone and get some analysis. The Bengals are 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 games in December, while the Patriots are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games in December. The home team is 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings between the two teams, and the over is 4-0 in the last 4 meetings in New England. Adam, how do you feel about this one between the Bengals and the Patriots?
Well, Cincinnati right now, one of the hottest teams in the NFL, winning 6 straight and have been rolling. Did they get behind against Tampa last week, but did come back? This line's interesting. It's pretty much the same line as what it was at Tampa last week. Cincinnati's back on the road again. It seems like they play all their games on the road. New England, obviously, as you mentioned, was an awful loss against Las Vegas. I just don't like this Mac Jones, Matt Patricia offense of New England. And I think if Cincinnati can get up, I don't think they can keep up with Joe Burrow moving the ball in this defense. New England's defense is ranked 9th against the pass and 9th against the rush, but it just doesn't seem like they've been playing that well of late. Carr did throw for 231 and 3 touchdowns against them. So I don't like the line of 3.5. I would buy that down and take Cincy on the money line. And over-under, I don't have a feel for, but I just don't like that combination of Jones and Patricia to keep up with Cincinnati when they get rolling.
Loeb, how do you feel about this one between Burrow and Bill Belichick?
Yeah, it's going to be tough for New England as much as they'd like to be on to Cincinnati. This isn't the team you want to play right now. Burrow's been really hot. As Adam pointed out, they've won their last 6 games, and they do a pretty good job covering. So even with I'm going to take Cincinnati and swallow the points. 5 of the Patriots' last 6 games as underdogs have gone over, so I got a slight lean towards the over. But yeah, I just think that New England's in a little bit of a flux, and I'm not sure that Matt Patricia and Mac Jones are on the same page right now.
I feel exactly what Jay Lope is putting down. I favor the over as well in this one, over 40 points after I buy it down. And much like Adam said, I like Cincinnati on the money line, and I like Cincinnati to cover as well. I feel like the Bengals are surging. They're getting healthier. They're playing some great football, and Joe Burrow is certainly an MVP candidate right now. And as for the Patriots, they're a disaster, and I think the loss last week was certainly kind of the death nail of their season. They may fight to the fringes of the playoff battle, but this really isn't a team that should be contending ultimately. They have a brutal final 3 games, so I think they're going to maybe lose out. That said, I think that starts against the Bengals at Foxborough on Saturday. Dennis, from a fantasy standpoint, a couple players I do have my eye on. I don't like Joe Mixon going up against that Patriots run defense, but I could see Jamar Chase torturing them. Do you think Jamar Chase is a good play? Usually Belichick likes to take away the number 1 option of an opposing team. Do you think he can do that with Chase?
Great question. I looked at the numbers from last week because I wanted to get a comparison. Devontae Adams was held to 4 catches and 28 yards, no touchdowns. So if we are to put Adams and Jamar on the same pedestal, you have to be fearful of it. At the same time, you've made it this far. If you made it into playoffs, of course you're going to roll with him. There's no way you're going to bench him. But I think I would have a little bit more interest in the supporting cast. Matt Collins and Keelan Cole, they had 14 and 13 points last week. So if T. Higgins or any of the other supporting cast is someone that you might want to take a flyer on in DFS, might not be a bad bet. As between all the players, I would prefer personally to go with Ramondre. I feel like he's matchup proof, especially if in a PPR where he's been involved in some of these short passes. I think he'll have enough numbers there to put up. I don't know what other options they really have. It didn't look like that the Pats had many other weapons other than Ramondre, notwithstanding the botched play at the end.
Love your take, Dennis. I certainly agree with you. I think Ramondre Stevenson, at worst, is the flex play for me at this point. He's just too consistent in what he can offer. And I agree with you about Matt Collins. For those out there who may need a wide receiver, Matt Collins may be a nice pickup off the waiver wire. Appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you're following us at ButtFumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at SportsFumble on Twitter. We're going to do a lot of shows for NFL Week 16. Make sure you're following us so you never miss an opportunity to join the conversation. The next game we're going to focus on is the 11-3 Buffalo Bills going up against the 3-11 Chicago Bears. This game is on CBS. Where I see it, Buffalo is a 9-point favorite, and the over-under is set at 40.5 points. Some gambling trends before we get analysis. The Bills are 2-6 against the spread in their last 8 games overall, while the Bears are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games overall. The favorite is 3-1-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings between the two teams. The under is 7-0 in the Bills' last 7 road games, and the over is 7-1 in the Bears' last 8 games overall. Adam, what are your thoughts about the matchup between maybe Josh Allen and Justin Fields, knowing I feel like we all are going to come out on the same play when it comes to the money line?
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right about that. But this is another game where weather will be involved. 6-7 degrees, 20-mile-an-hour winds at kickoff. Philadelphia was laying 9 at Chicago last week, and now Buffalo's coming back laying 8.5. Chicago is number 1 in rushing in the league, and Buffalo's 8th in rushing. I think you're going to see a lot of ground game here. But just because it's cold doesn't mean you can't throw the football either. So I think that's the edge to Buffalo. Also, edge to Buffalo, Chicago's rush defense is 27th in the league, which is really bad. So I think between Allen and Singletary, I think they can get big chunk plays. And Philadelphia and Chicago did put up 45 points in cold weather, a little bit of windy, not as cold as it's going to be on Sunday. So Buffalo money line, I don't like the 8.5. We talk about it all the time. Anything over 6 is really hard to cover these days in the NFL. So I love Buffalo on the money line. And I'll buy the points down a little bit. I would actually lean to the over here. I think 40.5 is very doable. Like I mentioned, Philly and Chicago got to 45 last week, and I don't think Philly even played their best offensive performance. So really like the over here and Buffalo on the money line.
I'm going to jump in with my pick. I certainly agree with Adam right away. The over is the play for me. I think it's the best play out of this game. I like the over 39 after I buy it down. And like I said a moment ago, I like Buffalo on the money line. I'd fold them into some parlays. I could see Buffalo covering on the spread, but I'm not going to touch that one until we get closer to kickoff to see where public money comes down. Lope, do you disagree with me? Do you agree with Adam? What are your thoughts on this game?
I am gonna go with the under. Each of the Bills' last 8 games as road favorites have gone under. I think the weather being cold, and I think their Bills are gonna get a lead and maybe take look to run the clock out and get out of here with a win. But I think we're all in agreement. The money line and the spread's a little too hard to touch unless you're doing something like a teaser and trying to get more points for the Bears. I think the Bills money line. But I don't see as much scoring in these kind of weather games, and I think Buffalo's coming off a tough game. They'll try to keep the playbook simple and just try to get out with a win and everyone healthy.
Dennis, I saw Khalil Herbert is being activated by the Bears. Is he someone you would consider? And given what we saw from Justin Fields last week, both spectacular, but, I don't know if it was an injury, a cramp, what that was. How do you feel about this game from a fantasy standpoint? Anyone you feel really good about?
I really do like Khalil, but not this week. I think I did see he got activated. I think Montgomery is still a safe start. I'd feel comfortable putting him out there on DFS. He's a $6,500 salary in DraftKings, so pretty reasonable. I agree with Adam and Lope in the sense of it should be something that we should expect a lot of runs with the weather, but I think we'll see that translate to fantasy points. I'd feel good about Montgomery if I was picking one starter here.
One player I really like this week is Stephon Diggs. I could see him having a really good week. Also like Singletary. Think he's someone who could have a good week. Bears are not good against the run. I know last week they were a little bit better against Miles Sanders than I expected, but I do think Singletary and James Cook. James Cook's available in a lot of leagues off the waiver wire. He might be someone you want to consider just as a late play, given especially how these guys are analyzing the game with the weather and the importance of the run game. James Cook may be someone you want to look at off the waiver wire. Appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you're following us at ButtFumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at SportsFumble on Twitter. The next game we're going to focus on in the 1 p.m. window on Saturday. Again, big slate of games on Saturday. The Christmas Eve window, the schedule rather, lots of games, almost treated like an NFL Sunday. The next game we're going to focus on, the 5-9 Atlanta Falcons against the 9-5 Baltimore Ravens. This game is on Fox. Where I see it, the Ravens are a 7-point favorite. The over-under set at 37.5 points. Some gambling trends before we get some analysis from the guys. Falcons are 2-6 against the spread in their last 8 games overall, while the Ravens are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games overall. The Falcons are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 meetings with the Ravens. The under is 4-1 in the last 5 meetings between the two teams. The under is 5-1 in the Falcons' last 6 games overall, and the under is 5-1 in the Ravens' last 6 games overall. I'll actually kick this one off, and I'll take the obvious one. The Butt Fumble Sports pick for this game is the under. After you buy a 1.5, that's under 39 points. I gave you too many gambling trends to go in any other direction, so it's the under for me. Adam, what are your thoughts on this game from the under standpoint as well as the spread?
Yeah, I agree. I think by the points and the under is a good play here. Again, weather will be a factor in this one. 15 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour winds, if not a little bit more. Lamar Jackson doesn't look like he's going to play again, and I read today that J.K. Dobbins missed practice today too, but he's expected to play. This will be Desmond Ritter's second game. He did go 13 for 26 for 97 yards and just, in my opinion, did not look good at New Orleans last week. Horrible long ball throws. His accuracy down the field was atrocious. I know it's going to be hard to throw the long ball in Baltimore, but this Baltimore defense will get after him. New Orleans did give up 4 sacks last week. Atlanta is 1-6 on the road, and I just do not see Ritter going into Baltimore winning this game. Again, the price is too high at Baltimore at -7.5. So Baltimore money line, and I agree with you, buy the points in the under because I just don't think Atlanta's going to score many points. And to the flip side of that coin, I think Baltimore, be in that 14 to 17 range too. So I agree with you on the under.
Lope, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think we're all in agreement. I'll do Adam one better. Falcons lost 8 of their last 9 road games. 7 of the Ravens' last 8 at home have gone under, so the under should be a good play. The only thing the Falcons' offense does do well is run the ball. Unfortunately, that's the Ravens' strength, and I think Huntley has enough time and rapport with the offense that he'll do just enough to score. Maybe the Falcons to cover, but at least the Ravens to win, and I think, like you said, the strongest play is the under.
Dennis, Kenny Pickett coming off of, Cordero Patterson is who I'm going to talk about. Cordero Patterson is going to have a tough matchup going up against that Ravens run game. And Lamar Jackson, we don't know if he's going to be back or not. What does that do for the status of the passing game of the Baltimore Ravens? Is there anyone in this game you really like from a fantasy standpoint?
I don't really like anyone, but that being said, I will say Mark Andrews, very, very due right now. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 6 against the New York Giants. He led the team in targets last week, albeit it was only 7. The week before that, he had 6 targets. He hasn't had more than 63 yards since week 11. But that just tells me, look, if you're going to play a hunch, I feel like this is the cheapest that you'll be able to get him all year in DFS at 5,500. If you're feeling frisky, go for it. Otherwise, nobody else here really makes me very excited.
Saturday at 1 p.m., the 8-5-1 New York Giants traveled to the 11-3 Minnesota Vikings to play on Fox. The Vikings are a 3-point favorite, and the over-under is set at 48 points. Some gambling trends before we go around and break it down. The Giants are 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 road games. The Vikings are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games played on Saturday. The favorite is 6-0 against the spread in the last 6 meetings between the two teams. The over is 4-1 in the Giants' last 5 Saturday games, and the over is 6-1 in the Vikings' last 7 home games. Adam, how do you feel about this one between the Giants and Vikings that could have really big playoff implications?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Minnesota, obviously, with the biggest comeback in NFL history against Indiana, and they are 7-1 at home. So I guess we can finally park the Bills-Oilers highlights for a while. Now we have some new ones to look at. But my question is, how does Minnesota respond to that? They were down 33-0 at half. They come back and win a game. Now they have to come back and play another tough game, like you mentioned. Both teams need a win here against the Giants. Giants obviously got it done last week against Washington. Barkley played a little bit better, 87 yards and a touchdown. Jones had 160 through the air and ran for 35, which are subpar numbers. But they're going against this Minnesota defense, who's just atrocious. They give up 24.9 points a game and don't seem to do anything right on defense at all. But on the flip side of that coin, I think you can see Cook having a big day today. The Giants' rushing defense is 30th in the league at 150.4, but the last 3 games, they've actually even been a lot worse than that, giving up 192.3. So I don't like to spread in this one. I'm going to stay away from that. But Minnesota's 4 of the last 5 have gone over, and the last 3 of 5 of the Giants have gone over. So I'd buy the points down a little bit because of the the poor rush defense for the Giants and the poor pass and rush defense for Minnesota, I like the over in this game.
Last week, Butt Fumble Sports told you to take a Dalvin Cook anytime touchdown as a player prop bet. Fortunately, we cashed on that, and it was a good time. That was late in the game to help the Vikings tie up that game to ultimately get them a win. I look towards Dalvin Cook to have another big game, as Adam just alluded to. Loeb, how do you feel like this game plays out between the Giants and Vikings?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be all eyes on the Vikings. They've won each of their last 13 games as favorites, so I do like them on the money line, but I'm not sure about the spread. It seems to be a little too much, but I think the strong play is the over. Both defenses are really bad, and I think both offenses are going to be able to move the ball. There should be plenty of points. I think I'll take the Vikings on the money line and the over.
Love that play from Loeb. Feel the same way. The Butt Fumble Sports picks for this one are Minnesota on the money line and the over. I'd buy the 1.5 and get the over 46.5. I also am considering the Giants to cover plus 4.5. The Giants have played really well on the road this year, and we've seen from the Vikings lately, they may be winning, but covering is another story. So there's a part of me that wants to take the Giants on the cover, but I'll probably wait thinking that the Vikings will get maybe some home love, get some extra points on that spread. But for, again, the Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one is Vikings on the money line and the over 46.5. Also considering the Giants on 4.5. Dennis, we talked about Adam talked about how bad the Vikings pass defense is. I think Daniel Jones may be a good player to pick up off the waiver wire. I certainly think that Dalvin Cook is going to have a massive day for the Minnesota Vikings. Who do you like in this matchup from a fantasy standpoint?
Totally agree with you on Jones. He might be a real sneaky start this week. He's definitely affordable DFS, $5,600. And anybody that is a pass catcher for the Giants, load him up. As long as they're not named Kenny Golladay, I would feel comfortable absolutely with Darius Slayton. I think we could even go a little deeper with Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins. On DFS, both of them are extremely affordable. So you have a very low investment for a potential high return. These receivers going against the Vikings defense fantasy-wise have all given great numbers for several weeks in a row. So if you find yourself with just a little bit of money as you're making your lineup and you're down to the flex, it's definitely worth a flyer on one of these Giants.
Make sure you're following us at Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at Sports Fumble on Twitter. Such an important week for fantasy football owners and for football players and fans in general. Playoffs are on the line, so if you need help with your fantasy team, make sure you're following us. That way you know every time we go live, so you can ask your question, get some help to make sure your fantasy team wins its matchup this week. Sticking and going back to gambling and getting our game picks for Saturday in the 1 p.m. window, the 7-7 Detroit Lions play the 5-9 Carolina Panthers on Fox. The Lions are a 3-point favorite coming off of their late game win against the New York Jets. The over-under is set at 44 points in this one where I see it. Some gambling trends before we go around to everyone. The Lions are 7-0 against the spread in their last 7 games overall. The Panthers are 4-0 against the spread in their last 4 games versus NFC opponents. The home team is 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings between the two teams. The under is 4-0 in the Lions' last 4 Saturday games, and the under is 5-2 in the Panthers' last 7 home games. Adam, how do you see this matchup going between all of a sudden everyone's favorite team, the Fighting Dan Campbell Detroit Lions, and the Carolina Panthers, who have played pretty well for an interim coach over the last few weeks?
Yeah, Detroit is now the darlings of the NFL. They've won 3 in a row, and everyone loves them. They love them because they can score, and they give up some points too, so they're kind of an exciting team to watch. They did get a win at the Jets last week, which was a good win on the road against a really tough Jets defense. That's proven something to me. Carolina had a bad loss at home against Pittsburgh and Mitchell Trubisky. I think a lot of people think Carolina had 2 in a row, needed that game to stay in touch with Tampa, and to lose at home against Trubisky is pretty bad. Carolina's defense has been playing better, but the last 2 games have gone over the total, and Detroit can move the ball running or passing, I think, on this Carolina team. And Detroit's defense has not been that great this year, so I think Darnold and Carolina can get enough points to get this thing over the total. So my play on this one is buy the points down to 42.5 and play the over, and I would get Detroit down to 2.5 under 3 and play Detroit.
Lope, are you feeling what Adam's putting down, or are you going in another direction?
No, I'm feeling what he's putting down, but I don't think there's any reason to give back points. The Lions have covered the spread in their last 7 games. I think they make it 8. I'm okay swallowing the points here. I think their defense is as bad as it is. Carolina doesn't offer too much of a threat, and when Jared Goff is protected with a little bit of a supporting cast, he's been playing very well as of late. So I'll take the Lions with maybe a slight lean towards the under. But I think the Lions covering is safe here.
I'm kind of going in a slightly different direction. I do like the under. I would buy the 1.5 and get the under 45.5. I do feel like the under is a really good play in this game. Jared Goff does not play well on the road, and the Carolina Panthers have a better defense than people think, and we see it week in, week out. But, whether it was against the Seahawks, the Steelers, their defense plays a little bit better than you'd think. That said, I want to go on both sides of the spread on this one, so just bear with me. I want to go with the Lions minus 1.5 after I buy it down, and I want to take the Carolina Panthers at plus 4.5 after I buy it up. I feel like this is going to be a 3-4 point game, so I feel like there's an opportunity to get on both sides of this one. I think it's going to be much tighter. I think everyone likes the Lions, but the Carolina Panthers, they fight, and I know that last week might have been a little disappointing that they didn't do a better job covering against the Steelers, but I think they bounce back. I think Sam Darnold has a decent game against this Lions secondary, so I can see the Carolina Panthers covering 4.5, but I do like the Lions on the money line, and I like the Lions minus 1.5. And like I mentioned a moment ago, I like the under 45.5. Dennis, from a fantasy standpoint, how do you feel about this one? Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was kind of put on Sauce Gardner Island last week, he's now back as a nice play for me. Is there anyone else, maybe some running backs from the Lions, or is DJ Moore a good play this week against that Lions secondary?
So Amon-Ra, I agree with you. Even though he was put on the supposed island, he still had 10 targets. The week before that, 9. The week before that, 12. The week before that, 10. So the volume is there. The talent is there. I would feel comfortable going with St. Brown. In terms of DJ Moore, he is kind of like the hit or miss. He had 6 targets last week, 3 before that, 6 before that. So he's had very up and down scores. 18 fantasy points last week. The week before that, he had 0.6. The week before that, he had 23. So if you're feeling lucky, if you are a Carolina fan, or if you just don't have any option, go for it. I don't like the inconsistency, especially being in the playoffs. Choosing between the two, I feel like Amon-Ra is the way to go.
Appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you're following us on Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at Sports Fumble on Twitter. We'll be doing shows all week, so you want to make sure you're following and subscribing so you never miss an opportunity to have your fantasy questions or game pick questions answered. The next game we're going to focus on is going to have a lot of weather around it, and that certainly impacts the total and the spread on this one. It's the 5-9 New Orleans Saints going up against the 6-8 Cleveland Browns. This one is on CBS. The Browns are a 3-point favorite coming off their win last week against the Baltimore Ravens. And the over-under for this one is a chilly, frigid, windy 32 points. That matches the weather that we should be expecting very in the Saints' last 7 games overall. And the under is 4-0 in the Browns' last 4 games overall. I'll kick this one off for everyone. The Butt Fumble Sports pick for this game is the under. By the 1.5, take under 33.5 points. When Vegas comes out with a line that is, or a total that is this low, the under hits something like 70% of the time, 80% of the time. Vegas is telling you which way this one's going to go. The weather isn't going to change. They're not going to move the venue. I just expect this to be a miserable game, low scoring. Take the under 33.5 points. As for the spread and the total, I'll wait on that until we get closer to game time. Adam, how are you feeling about the game in terms of spread and money line?
Yes, the weather in this game is going to be really bad, like you mentioned. Snow, fog, 10 degrees, 25-mile-an-hour winds. The worst weather across the NFL slate. So look at the rushing games here. Cleveland obviously is 5th in the league in rushing, and New Orleans is 21st. So big edge there. Also edge, New Orleans is 23rd in the league against the run. So that's a huge advantage for Cleveland, and I think Cleveland's just going to rely on that running game and just keep pounding the ball down New Orleans' throat. Cleveland's defense played well last week against Baltimore. They did give up some yards, but they bended and didn't break. And on the flip side of that coin, for New Orleans running the football, Kamara's just been struggling. He did have 91 yards last week, but the last 5 games before that has been pretty subpar for him. New Orleans is 1-5 on the road, and Ruiz, the center for New Orleans, is going to be out now. They put him on IR, so that's going to hurt that offensive line for sure. On the flip side of the coin, Duvernay is on IR. Oh, sorry about that one. Wrong nose. So Ruiz is on IR for New Orleans, which is going to hurt the running game there. So I'm with you. I think you buy the points and you play the under in this one, and I think you get Cleveland under 2.5 and play Cleveland as well.
Loeb, how are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. This is going to be a really tough game. It's going to feel like old school, hand the ball off and just try to play field position and score enough points to win. So I think the under is the strong play, and I'll say that Cleveland, the Saints have failed to cover the spread in 5 of their last 6 road games, I think, as Adam said as well. So I'll take Cleveland. I'll swallow the points, and I think it's one of the stronger plays, Cleveland and the under.
Dennis, when you're in a situation like this with weather, can you trust Amari Cooper? Can you trust Donovan Peoples-Jones? Nick Chubb showed up on the injury report. How do you feel about this one from a fantasy standpoint?
All sorts of X factors here to consider, right? I know Chubb did not practice today. Neither did Chris Olave. So definitely keep an eye on that. In terms of the approach to the week, if you wanted to draft early, first of all, shout out David Johnson. If you're feeling nostalgic, he's currently available at 4,400 on DFS. We know Kamara is expected to get a lot of work here, especially against the 30th ranked defense against the run for fantasy purposes. But who knows? Maybe if you're feeling a little old school, you want to see if David Johnson can renew the magic. Ingram is now on IR, so I think he will be the backup here. You mentioned Peoples-Jones. I didn't know this until looking up for the tonight. He's scored double-digit fantasy points every week since week 6, except for week 12. So he's definitely consistent, and he's not expensive. So if the weather impacts that, I don't know, but I definitely – he's someone who's been under the radar for me, and I've overlooked him. So props to him for being able to put up the numbers he has.
And one of the reasons he's been able to do that, it hasn't just been in the receiving game. He's been a special teams dynamo as well. Had that return for that for a touchdown, that punt return for a touchdown, I believe it was, against the Houston Texans a few weeks ago. So while I'm not crazy about him from a receiving standpoint this week, given the weather, even in special teams, even in other ways, he may impact the game. So if you're in a tough spot and you have to start him from a fantasy standpoint, maybe you can get lucky and get some more production out of him, kind of like a Cordero Patterson has at times in the past, that kind of wide receiver, running back, special teams player combo. Appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you're following us on Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at Sports Fumble on Twitter. The next game we're going to cover is the 7-7 Seattle Seahawks against the 11-3 Kansas City Chiefs. This game is on Fox. Where I see it, the Chiefs are a 10-point favorite. The over-under set at 48.5 points. Some gambling trends before we get everyone's analysis. The home team is 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings between the two. The Seahawks are 2-7 against the spread in their last 9 meetings with the Chiefs. The over is 5-1 in the Seahawks' last 6 road games. The over is 5-1 in the Chiefs' last 6 games in December. And the over is 5-1 in the Seahawks' last 6 games on Saturday. I'll kick this one off. The Butt Fumble Sports pick for this game is the over. Love the over 47 points after I buy it down. I do lean slightly towards Kansas City on the money line, but I also really like the Seattle Seahawks to cover. I would buy the 1.5, get Seahawks plus 11.5, take Chiefs on the money line. And like I mentioned, the over, I think there are going to be a lot of points in this game. Adam, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I agree with you on both sides completely. Kansas City really struggled last week against Houston, but their last 3 games have been on the road, so they're finally back at home. And Seattle did lose to San Francisco at home on Thursday night, so they got a little bit of extra rest. Kansas City, #1 league in the pass. Seattle's number 9th in the pass. However, Lockett's out, and Walker is still questionable as he did not practice today. The big thing for me in this game is the spread is so big, and Kansas City's defense over the last 3 games has given up 24, 28, and 24 points, and 2 of those teams was Houston and Denver, 2 of the most offensively challenged teams in the league, and not to mention Chris Jones now is questionable with an illness as well. Geno Smith, 7 of the last 8 games, he's thrown 2 or more touchdown passes, and Kansas City versus the Rams at home won 24-10, but every other game at home this year has been pretty close, if not a single score game. So I'm with you. I buy the points down. I love the over and get Kansas City up to minus 10.5 and play Seattle in this one. I think Seattle's offense is good enough to keep this thing close, and I just think that number is way too big for this one.
Lope, are you following Adam and myself?
On the Seahawks, yes. On the over, I actually got the under. I think the last 4 games the Chiefs had at Arrowhead Stadium have gone under. So, these Chiefs that they should be blowing these some of these bad teams out, and they've let them hang around. Mahomes sometimes with some careless turnovers. So I definitely think the Seahawks plus 9.5 is the strong play. But I am a little weary on your guys' going over.
Interesting. Getting some different action on that total play. Really like to hear it. Dennis, from a fantasy standpoint, DK Metcalf, do we like him? How do we feel about Kenneth Walker III? And of course, Travis Kelce, could we expect a really big day from him, given he's going up against the Seattle Seahawks defense that's one of the worst in the NFL against tight ends?
I totally agree with you on that last point. Kelsey's a beast. Whatever he's going to cost, go with him on DFS if you want to have a guaranteed at the tight end position. On Seattle's side of the ball, Marquise Goodwin, I think, is a great pickup. First of all, even if you're in the playoffs and you lost Tyler Lockett, such as myself, he's currently rostered in only 1% of leagues. You're going against the 29th ranked defense against wide receivers for fantasy points. I would absolutely feel comfortable starting him this week, whether he's in your wide receiver 2 or your flex position. And on DFS, he's a little more expensive than he typically has been, but it's definitely worth a flyer. And I think he's only 2 games removed from having put up 95 yards. So we know he's got the talent. He definitely has the speed.
Appreciate all of you joining us. Excited about the final the final game of this 1 p.m. slate on Saturday. Surprisingly, not because it's a great matchup, but because of what it may offer from a player prop standpoint. We'll get to that in just a moment. This one, surprisingly, I know you may not expect me to be so excited about a 1-12-1 Houston Texans matchup against the 7-7 Tennessee Titans. This game is on CBS. The Titans are a 5-point favorite. The over-under set at 37 points. Some gambling trends before I reveal that player prop I'm so excited about. The home team is 9-4 against the spread in the last 13 meetings between the Texans and Titans. The Texans are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games against the AFC South. The Titans are 7-3 against the spread in their last 10 games against the AFC South. The under is 5-1 in the last 6 meetings in Tennessee, and the under is 9-2 in the Titans' 11 home games. So let me kick this one off. I'm super excited about this game because of what it offers, focused on Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is playing a Texans defense that is the worst in the NFL against the run, and Henry has 4 straight games against the Texans with at least 200-plus rushing yards and at least 2 rushing touchdowns. Those are crazy numbers. So whatever the total rushing yards total is for Derrick Henry, take the over. Whatever the number is for anytime touchdown, buy it. Wherever you can get an anytime touchdown plus a Titans win, buy that parlay. I'll lead that right into my game pick. The Butt Fumble Sports pick for this game is Titans on the money line. And I also really like the under. The trends kind of fade that way. So under 38.5 points after you buy it down. Adam, I'm sure you're also liking my Derrick Henry player prop bets, but how do you feel about this game from a game pick and a spread standpoint? The Texans have been fighting some teams over the last few weeks. Do you think they could cover this week?
Yeah, I have to say your enthusiasm is way more than I have for this game for sure. But yeah, Houston's been a problem for Kansas City and Dallas the last couple of weeks, and now they're back on the road. But I think you hit the nail on the head. It's Derrick Henry against the 32nd race rush defense in the league. And Tannehill got banged up last week. came back in with that bum ankle. Willis was in there. It looked atrocious. So I really don't like the offensive quarterback right now for Tennessee, but I don't think it's going to matter. Like you mentioned, I think Henry has a big day here. I think Houston will try to stop the run, but won't be able to do it. On the flip side of the coin, Tennessee's pass defense has been really bad, but I don't really believe in Davis Mills. He was only 12 to 24 for 121 yards, but did throw 2 touchdowns last week. So I'm with you on this one. I like Tennessee on the money line and Henry over rushing yards and rushing touchdowns in this one. As far as the over-under, I don't really have much of a play for it. The weather's going to be same as kind of the other games, around 10 degrees, a little bit of wind, but I think Derrick Henry is the big one to watch in this game.
Lope, what are your thoughts on this game between the Texans and the Titans?
I'm in agreement with you guys. I think as frustrating as it's been to be a Titans fan lately, this is the medicine they need. And not only is they have a huge advantage in the running game as opposed to the Texans' rush defense, but on the flip side of the coin, they're really good at stopping the run, and the Texans can't do that at all. So now you make Davis Mills one-dimensional, and that'll help out some of their weaknesses in their pass defense. So I definitely think the Titans money line is a strong play. I'm not so certain about the spread quite yet. And then I'll also go with the over. I think that the Titans will have a big day and look to make a statement to say that and get ready for the playoffs.
Dennis, I know we talked earlier about Travis Kelce being worth whatever amount of money the price tag is. Is Derrick Henry in that same category where whatever the price tag is, he's worth buying, or is he too expensive given what his stats are and I'm sure what his price will be in DFS come this weekend?
All right, so let's look at his current asking price is $8,600, and if we look back to week 8 when we had the first round against Houston at Houston, he was listed at $8,400. He had 32 carries for 219 yards, and he averaged 6.8 yards per carry. So my answer to your question is absolutely. He's the most talented offensive player on Tennessee's side. I think this is an important game for them. They're going to feed him the ball as much as possible. If anything, I would love to know what the potential prop pick might be on attempts. Whatever it might be, I'd be leaning towards the over.
Love that call as well. Definitely check out what Dennis is going to throw your way. He puts out a DFS lineup via Butt Fumble Sports every weekend. So before our kickoff on Saturday, hopefully by Friday night, we'll be able to show that to you so you can have your lineup set for Saturday. But that said, make sure you don't miss Dennis's DFS lineup. He crushes it every week, does such a great job, and puts in so much research. Definitely appreciate all that you do, Dennis. Let's go to the next game, and this one is the first game in the 4 p.m. window on Saturday. The 7-6-1 Washington Commanders fly out west to play the 10-4 San Francisco 49ers. This game is on CBS. Where I see it, the 49ers are a 7-point favorite, and the total is set at 39 points. Commanders are 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 Saturday games. The 49ers are 9-2 against the spread in their last 11 home games, and the road team is 5-1-1 against the spread in the last 7 meetings between the Commanders and the 49ers. The under is 5-1 in the last 6 meetings, and the under is 4-1-1 in the Commanders' last 6 road games. Adam, what are your thoughts about Commanders and 49ers?
Well, I think it's a big game for both teams. Defensive battle. Washington obviously needed that game last week against the Giants and didn't get it done. Brock Purdy's been playing good, just good enough for San Francisco, minimizing mistakes and letting the talent around him do the work. San Fran is 6-1 at home this year, and they do have a little extra rest since they had that win against Seattle last Thursday night. And to me, -7 again, we talk about all the time. That's just too much to pay for me. So I'm looking at the over/under on this game. And I think you have San Fran sitting right now with a solid defense. First against the rush, 13th against the pass. And as I've said before in previous weeks, Washington's defense has been playing better. I know they stumbled last week against the Giants, but they are 8th against the pass and 12th against the rush. So to me, I'm looking at the under in this game. I buy it up over 40.5 or 41. Washington's last 4 games also have gone under the total. The only question mark for me in this game, and I'm actually kind of surprised, is there was a little bit of chatter yesterday and doing a little bit of reading this morning that Wentz's name is kind of getting thrown around here. If Heineke struggles in the first half, there's a possibility that Carson Wentz can come in this game. So I was really kind of, get you guys' thoughts on that and what you think that may look like. But for me, buy this up to 40.5 or 41 and take the under.
I haven't heard anything about that, Adam. I would be really surprised. I feel like the clubhouse, the locker room is firmly behind Heineke. I also think just statistically, look at the record, he's been the better quarterback. I'd be really surprised. But then again, Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron, he gambles when everyone else plays a conservative. So maybe he's looking to light a fire under his team after a loss last week. That said, they didn't lose by that much. And if the refs had called that game appropriately, maybe they wouldn't have lost at all. So I wouldn't lean away from Taylor Heineke if I'm Ron Rivera. But you never know with what's going on in Washington, craziest franchise in the NFL. Lope, what are your thoughts on what Adam put out there? And what are your thoughts on a game pick and spread for this one?
Well, if it is true, I would assume that Rivera's got to be feeling some kind of pressure where he thinks that if he doesn't make the playoffs, he might not be coaching this team next year. That would be my only explanation. But I think he's kind of made his bed with Heineke. I think he's just got to live with it at this point. As for that, I think they're desperate enough, and I think the spread at +7 is something that this is still a good Washington team. I know they had a letdown against the Giants. There was some calls that didn't go their way, but I'll take the points. And I think we talked about it. Two good defensive teams, probably going to have each other's numbers. So I'm going to have a slight lean to the under.
I agree with you, Lope, and I thought that was a great point you just made. Maybe Ron Rivera feels like if he doesn't make the playoffs, that's the end of his tenure at Washington. So, yeah, maybe a late season quarterback change just because he's feeling the heat. That would be the only reason that would make sense to me. But even then, I would stay with Heineke. I feel like he's the better chance to actually get you into the playoffs. Anyways, going to the Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one between the Commanders and the 49ers. Much like Lope said, I feel like Washington is a better team than what we saw on Sunday night against the Giants. I think a lot of things went against that team in that game. I like Washington to bounce back and cover in this game. I do like the 49ers on the money line, but Washington +8.5 after I buy it up. I feel like that's a great play. I feel like it's going to be much more competitive than a touchdown spread. So getting it at +8.5, I feel really good about that. And much like Adam and Lope also alluded to, I like the under in this one. Two good defensive teams. I know Brock Purdy has kind of shown out offensively in ways I certainly didn't expect, but I do think this game is going to be more about the defenses. So I like the under 40.5 after I buy it up. Dennis, from a fantasy standpoint, Christian McCaffrey, is he our favorite player from this game? And on the other side, I really don't like Brian Robinson or Antonio Gibson this week. They're must-sits for me, given they're going up against the 49ers run defense. So does that mean Terry McLaurin is a better play?
Okay, so multifactorial question here. I agree with you. I don't understand why Brian Robinson doesn't get the ball more. It seemed like last week he was averaging at least 5-6 yards a carry. I think it was actually like 7.5 yards, and he only got 12 carries. I think he's definitely the most talented running back for the Commanders, but the one player I was leaning towards, or if any, at least for purposes of fantasy, was going to be the San Fran defense. They're the second ranked overall. They are projected to have the highest amount of fantasy points this week in terms of all defenses. With respect to Terry McLaurin, I don't know. I just feel like if I am going to touch anything in this game, McCaffrey, I mean, it's just a no-brainer. Especially as a fan, it's just so fun to watch him. And if you own him as a fantasy manager, it's just great to see him get as many touches as possible. But otherwise, I wouldn't be very enthusiastic about any of the Commanders this week.
The other game on the Sunday 1 p.m. window, on the Saturday 4 p.m. window, is the 13-1 Philadelphia Eagles against the 10-4 Dallas Cowboys. That one kicks off at 4:25 on Fox. Of course, the big story in this one, will Jalen Hurts play? Will he not? He has not been officially ruled out yet, so a lot that could happen over the coming days. But that said, Nick Sirianni is really hoping that Jalen Hurts can play. He was the one who's actually kind of encouraging the talk and thought that he could play. Funny that a head coach will be putting his quarterback in that position. Given this game won't have the same implications that it could, looks like the Eagles will definitely secure that number 1 seed and the division title. But that said, the Dallas Cowboys are a 5-point favorite down there in Dallas. The over-under set at 46 points. Some gambling trends before we get everyone's take on this one. The home team is 7-1 against the spread in the last 8 meetings between the Eagles and Cowboys. The Eagles are 3-7 against the spread in their last 10 meetings with the boys. The favorite is 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings. The over is 4-0 in the last 4 meetings, and the over is 4-0 in the Cowboys' last 4 home games. I'll kick this one off. I like Dallas on the money line. I did even before the Jalen Hurts news. I think coming off 2 bad weeks, I think this team is going to get itself right at home. I expect Dallas to win. I'm even going as far as I like Dallas on a cover right now. I like that without Jalen Hurts in the lineup. I like that with Jalen Hurts in the lineup. Obviously, the spread's going to move if Hurts plays. But for now, I think Vegas is accounting for him to be out. So right now at that -5, I would get it Dallas at -3.5. But if Hurts plays in this one, that could shift that back down. I still like Dallas to cover in this game. I think this game means way more to the Dallas Cowboys. It's in Dallas. I think for a number of reasons, the Cowboys are the better play. I also like the over in this one, over 44.5 after I buy it down. And again, on this one, I don't think it's necessarily dependent on Jalen Hurts playing. I like the over even with Minshew playing. I think Gardner Minshew not only is a good option we've seen throughout his NFL career, he kind of steps in as kind of the perfect backup. He really slings it around. Plenty of weapons on this Eagles offense for him to go to. But also, just on a personal note, he spent Tuesday at Mike Leach's funeral giving the eulogy. If there's anyone who's going to go out and ball out in one of those Brett Favre after his father dies kind of games, I think it's Gardner Minshew. If I were the Eagles, I would sit Jalen Hurts, rest him, make sure he's ready for the playoffs, in part because if Mike Leach is looking down, Gardner Minshew is going to throw for a lot of yards against the Cowboys secondary that is banged up and looked bad against the Jaguars last week. Well, Gardner Minshew, the former Jaguar, I could see him having a big day in Dallas. So I really like Dallas. He could have a big day for the Eagles. So I like Dallas on the money line, like Dallas covering, but I do like the over in this one as well. Adam, I know I threw a lot out there. What are your thoughts on this game, this big NFC East rivalry matchup between the Eagles and Cowboys?
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me, and it all depends on Hurts. I agree with you. If I'm the Eagles, you got the Saints next week. I know you still have to get one more win to wrap up that #1 seed. That's if Minnesota keeps going, but I think you sit him. I think you sit him here. I think you get him healthy and ready for the playoffs. Like you mentioned, Gardner Minshew coming in. I think he's probably serviceable enough. This line is interesting though because it opened. It went all the way, and when the news of Hurts came out, I seen it all the way up to 6.5, and now it's back down to where I see it at 4.5. And Hurts is, talking a little bit more like he was going to kind of play today a little bit more and not so grim. So I'm really curious to see where this line goes. So I'm going to sit tight on it for now, but I do agree with you. If Hurts plays or doesn't play, I do think Dallas in the money line can be the play here. I think Dallas will be able to run the football in Philadelphia. But really, in my opinion, I think Hurts does sit out. I think Sirianni does the right thing here and sits him out. But I'm going to sit tight on this one until I get further information on what Hurts is doing. But yeah, just Mike Leach, just what an incredible coach and a personality for all of college football. So rest in peace for him, the mad scientist. And I saw some of the things on Twitter today, some of the videos and speeches that were made, and his impact will sure be on college football for a long time.
Lope, what are your thoughts on this game between the Eagles and Cowboys?
Yeah, first off, pay respects to Mike Leach, obviously, RIP. He's meant so much, and I think, as Adam said, all the videos and how many different lives he touched and how many different coaches he gave a start to is awesome. That being said, I think I wonder if part of the Eagles keeping Jalen Hurts in the eye is just a ploy to make the Cowboys practice for him. I just don't see a reason why they would try him if the shoulder is not at least 90 to 100%. But for that reason, I think I'm in agreement with But Fumble Sports. I'm going to take the Cowboys money line, and I'm going to go with the over because the Eagles can still run the ball, and the Gardner Minshew is not a typical backup. He's a higher end backup. There was talks that the Eagles might have traded him earlier in the year, and I think they're happy they stuck with him, and it's for games like this. So I think the Cowboys money line and the over are two strong plays here.
Dennis, there are a lot of big fantasy names mentioned in this one. CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard, Miles Sanders, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. You even have Dallas Goedert coming back. So who are some of the ones that you like this week in fantasy?
First, let me just say that I really wish that this had been flexed to either the Sunday or Monday night game. There's so many strong offensive players that this is the kind of game you want to watch at night. It just bums me out that we might not be able to have a matchup like this. I agree with everybody's sentiments on Minshew. I think whether he starts or Hurts, I think you can still expect a really high-scoring game. I'd be comfortable playing any of the A.J. Brown, even if it is with Minshew, just for the record. He had 16 targets last week, which is ridiculous. So if it is Hurts, you can expect to see that. I love the rivalry between these two teams. And Devonta Smith also not a slouch. Pollard has been getting it done all year. He can explode for a play at any given time. So if it really just comes down to if it's DFS, what your budget is, who your favorites are. I think that as a fan, you just pick the guys that you like and sit back and enjoy it.
Having spent time in sports media, I'll respond to Dennis's inquiry about flexing this game. There is no way that Fox is going to give up an afternoon game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. There aren't enough trades that can be made between NBC or ESPN and Fox. They would rather give up the Simpsons like they did a few years ago than give up Eagles Cowboys at that 4:25 kickoff. So no, I don't think this game will get flexed. But that said, I think this one is going to be really entertaining, and I hope all of you guys enjoy it on that Christmas day or day before Christmas game. As for the night before Christmas, all was not quiet in the house because you had the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Las Vegas Raiders doing battle. The Raiders traveling to Pittsburgh. Both teams are 6-8. This game is supposed to commemorate the anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. I don't know what you call what we saw last week between the Raiders and Patriots. I'd love to get some nicknames from those out there. What would you call that play that we saw at the end of the game? That said, the Raiders got a very important win to at least keep their mirage of a playoff chance alive. And as for the Steelers, Mike Tomlin, with a win last week against the Panthers, still keeps his chances of keeping that 500 record or better alive. He has never had a season in which he's coached in which he's had a losing record. The Steelers are favored in this game by 3 points. That is probably in part due to Kenny Pickett being cleared from concussion protocol. He's expected to be back on the field. The over-under for this one is set at 39.5 points. Let's get to some gambling trends. Raiders are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games overall. The underdog is 5-0 against the spread in the last 5 meetings between the Raiders and Steelers. The Raiders are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games in Pittsburgh. The under is 4-1 in the Raiders' last 5 road games, and the under is 8-2 in the Steelers' last 10 games overall. I'll kick this one off. I actually like the Raiders to cover on this one. I would buy the 1.5. I think Josh McDaniels got his most important win as a head coach to date in his career, not only beating Bill Belichick, but the way in which it went down. I think he's got this team not believing that they're going to go anywhere, but believing that they're better and that the prospects of the future are better than they were a month ago. So I think there's a bit of belief with the Raiders right now. And on the other side, I just don't feel very good about the Steelers offense, even with Kenny Pickett. So in this game, I think the Raiders, if nothing else, keep it close. So I like Raiders plus 4.5. And I like the under after you buy a 1.5, under 41. Adam, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'll keep this one short and sweet here because I'm on the wrong side of the Raiders every single week. So 11 degrees, 21-hour winds, picking questionable, and just the issues I have with the Raiders on this one, I'm just staying away from this game. 2 teams that really have nothing to play for other than a little bit of pride and jobs for next year. So for me, I'm just staying off this one.
I like nothing better than people giving a warning that the Raiders are not worth betting on. I think we saw last week why you shouldn't touch the Raiders with a 10-foot pole. Lope, are you going to risk it and chance it? Are you betting on the Raiders this week?
I think I am. I'm gonna need you guys to talk me down, but just to go back, I'm kind of interested to see what the kind of nicknames people do have for him. It's funny that the Raiders, from the Sea of Hands to the Holy Roller to the Heidi Bowl game, they always seem to tuck rule game. They always seem to play in these kind of weird games. So I'm going to say that. But Steelers have lost 7 of their last 8 against AFC opponents. Raiders have covered the spread in 4 of their last 5. 8 of the last 10 at whatever the new Heinz Field's called have gone under. So I'm gonna chance it and go with the Raiders +3, and I'll take a flyer on the under because the weather is going to be terribly cold and brutal. So it'd be interesting how the Raiders travel.
Dennis, what are your thoughts on this one from a fantasy standpoint?
This may sound kind of gross, but I'm actually contemplating Najee Harris. Last week, he saw 24 attempts, definitely far and away the most that he's had throughout the season. It looks like if it is Trubisky, that would be the safer way to go. But even if Trubisky's on the bench, I think that he's getting looks. And Las Vegas is 28th against running backs in fantasy. So I like him, especially for the price on DFS.
I agree with you. Najee Harris is one of those running backs I haven't liked all season. I didn't care what his matchup was, but I actually feel like this week might be his best opportunity of the year to deliver some production for fantasy owners who have held on to him throughout the season. The next game we're going to look at does shift us to Sunday. Welcome to Christmas. Merry Christmas to all of you out there. I do hope you have a great holidays, and to all those who are celebrating the Jewish holidays and all the other holidays this time of year, I hope it goes well for you. As for the Green Bay Packers, they got a big gift last night in their win against the Los Angeles Rams, keeping their playoff hopes at least dimly alive. They have to win out and get some help. Will they get the help that they need in South Beach as they go up against an 8-6 Miami Dolphins team that's thawing out from its trip to Buffalo? This game between the Packers and Dolphins kicks off on Fox, 1 p.m. on Sunday. It's the only game 1 p.m. on Sunday, as the NFL only has 3 games on Christmas, while the NBA puts on its blitz of a number of games. The Dolphins are 4-point favorites where I see it in this one. This line has moved a little bit. I think the Packers are getting a little bit of love after last night's game. So this has come down just a half point or so over the last couple of hours. So Miami is a 4-point favorite. The over-under set at 49.5 points. Some gambling trends before we get everyone's analysis. The Packers are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 meetings with the Dolphins. The Packers are also 3-7 against the spread in their last 10 road games. The Dolphins are 2-8 against the spread in their last 28 home games. The over is 4-1 in the Packers' last 5 games overall, and the under is 5-1 in the Dolphins' last 6 games overall. Adam, how do you feel about this one between the Packers and Dolphins?
Yeah, it's got my Packers against Lopes Dolphins, so it should be interesting. Miami needs to win badly. They were on the road for the last 3 games, out in California for 2, and like you mentioned, a tough loss up at Buffalo. But they did score 29 points in that game, and I think that's something to be said. Maybe their offense may have get back on track, even with those cold conditions. You mentioned it before. Green Bay has a small chance to make the playoffs. They need a lot of help, and they need to win out as well. I'm just looking at the defensive side of the ball in this one. Green Bay shows second in the league against the pass, but that's because they're 29th in the league against the run. So I think Mostert had a big day against Buffalo at 136 yards. I think he could have another big day against Green Bay on defense. And to me, the secondary, I'm not sure how you slow down Waddle and Hill. I've watched the secondary all year. Like I said, I know the numbers say they're second in the pass, but Joe Barry has his defense and these guys out of position too many times. Offensively for the Packers, last night, Watson and Dobbs for the first time have been on the field healthy together with Lazard. So that gives more weapons for Rodgers, and that's going to look really good in the future with those 2 young wide receivers. Dillon did leave the game last night, questionable with concussion, but I did see today that he's expected to play. The one thing I see is the sacks for Miami. The last 3, they're averaging 3.5 sacks a game, and I think they get after Rodgers in this one. So I'm not saying it's going to be a runaway for Miami, but I think Green Bay is going to try to run the football here and utilize those 2 young wide receivers as best they can. But like I mentioned before, I think Mostert on the ground can set up a big day for the passing for Tua and get Waddle and Hill back on track. And also Miami is 5-1 at home, and as I mentioned, desperately in need of a win. So as much as it pains me to do it, I think I swallow the 4 here with Miami. I think Miami wins this game by 7. As far as the over-under, that's a lot of points. I do think you can see a lot of points in this game, but when you get up to around 50 or so, if Green Bay's offensive philosophy is to run the football and keep it away from Tua and that offense, I think this game could go under. So I'm staying off of it, but I do like Miami in the points.
I'll give my pick very quickly. The Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one is Miami on the money line. I also like Miami to cover after I buy it down. But other than that, I'm not really touching this game. Probably going to stay away from most of it unless I see something good come about through public money coming down throughout the week. Lope, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean it's been tough, 3-game stretch for the Dolphins for sure. They need this game a lot, and obviously if the Packers don't win, their season's over. Even though it's kind of teetering anyways. But I think McDaniel kind of found something. If he runs the ball early and kind of keeps a little bit of a balance, that it does help the passing game. So I think that's something they're going to try. So Mostert could have a big game with Wilson hurt. Um, And then, yeah, I'm in agreement. Hill and Waddle are obviously trouble for everyone, especially if you try to bring safeties down to help with the run. So, I'm in agreement. I'm going to take the Dolphins. I don't know about the cover. I'm a little bit shaky on it, but at least the money line. And unless the line moves a little bit, I'm going to stay off the over under.
Dennis, any fantasy plays we like in this one?
I think this is the first time I'm saying it all year. I like Aaron Rodgers, and the reason for that is not necessarily my confidence in Green Bay as much as I think that they're going to be playing from behind. With Miami's 31st against quarterbacks in fantasy, Rodgers is available at a very affordable $5,700 on DraftKings, so he might be my stream of the week for a quarterback on DFS.
The next game that we have, 4 p.m. on Sunday, we're going to go through it very quickly. Not much we want to talk about with this one. 4-10 Denver Broncos against the 4-10 LA Rams. This one on CBS. Denver is a 2-point favorite where I see it. The over-under set at 36.5 points. Some gambling trends really quick. The home team is 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings. The Rams are 6-1 in their last 7 games in December. That's against the spread. The under is 7-1 in the Broncos' last 8 games on field turf, and the under is 4-1 in the last 5 meetings between the two. I like the under in this one. It's the only play I'll make. Other than that, I'm completely avoiding it. Adam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think the under's only play here. And as far as this game goes, Ripken versus Mayfield, I'll take Giannis and Tatum in that time slot and watch Bucks Celtics on this one. So I'm going to pass on this game.
Love it. Going to be doing the same in that same time slot. Lope, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. I'm just gonna. I don't think there's a strong play. I mean, you just don't know with inconsistent quarterbacking, and also 2 teams that might just be experimenting for next year. So, besides the under, I don't think there's a strong play here.
Dennis, what are your thoughts on this one? Anyone from fantasy you'd even consider?
Yeah, not a lot of enthusiasm. If there was one guy I might take a flyer on, I'd be looking at Latavius Murray, 24 attempts last week. Obviously had a good game. I think it's going to be an ugly game, and I think that they'll be probably handing the ball off a lot, so he might be one person just by volume that I'd keep an eye on. Otherwise, I don't think I'm watching this.
On Sunday Night Football, the 6-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers play the 4-10 Arizona Cardinals. This one kicks off at 8:20 on NBC. Tampa Bay is a 6.5-point favorite where I see it, with the over-under set at 41 points. The Bucs are 10-2-1 against the spread in their last 13 games following a double-digit loss at home. The Cardinals are 3-10 against the spread in their last 13 home games. The underdog is 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings between the Bucs and Cards. The under is 5-1 in the Bucs' last 6 road games. The over is 7-1 in the Cardinals' last 8 home games. I'll kick this one off. I like Tampa Bay on the money line, folding that into a number of parlays throughout the week. I also like Tampa Bay to cover. I'm going to buy the 1.5 and bring it down, but I think this is going to be Tom Brady's best game of the final weeks of his what could be career. I think Tom Brady has a good game, but I like Tampa Bay on the money line in parlays, and I like Tampa Bay to cover after I buy it down. Adam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Tampa Bay needs a must-win here. Lost their last 2, obviously. Let a game slip away last week in Cincinnati. Arizona's lost their last 4. McCoy got hurt last week, so it looks like McSorley will be the quarterback to go in this game potentially. And Arizona's 1-7 at home. They're just a mess. One thing I do agree with you is Tampa on the money line. I'm going to stay off the over-runner. But one stat I did read in this game, which is very Brady-like, is in his last 5 games, he's thrown 6 interceptions, which is pretty outstanding to me. It's just he's really been kind of struggling of late, and the offense has showed. But yeah, for me, I'm with you. I like Tampa on the money line. I'm not so enthusiastic about the number, but if you do buy it down, I don't think it's a bad play as well.
Lope, what are your thoughts?
I don't think Tampa deserves to be 6.5-point favorites over anybody. I'll take the Cardinals. I'll take a page out of your book and buy it up a point, And then I'm going to stick with the over. I think Tampa Bay wins, but I don't see them blowing out anybody. They're shooting themselves in the foot, as Adam pointed out, whether it's interceptions, fake punt botches, bad special teams play, whatever it is. I don't think they're going to pull away too far, but I do think they get a much needed win.
Dennis, are you with me in believing Tom Brady's a good DFS play this week?
I'm at least with you in that I hope he is. It's just been painful to watch him. Not that I'm a huge fan. If anything, as a Jet fan, he loved beating up on us. But just because he's the GOAT, I really do think if there is a game for him to shine, this would be it from a fantasy perspective or otherwise. That being said, on the other side, if Trace McSorley is the starter for Arizona, I like the Bucs defense. They're definitely available currently at $2,700 for a defense. So keep an eye on whether McCoy's cleared from the concussion protocol.
Make sure you're following us on Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at Sports Fumble on Twitter. The last game of NFL Week 16 is on Monday Night Football between the 8-6 LA Chargers and the 4-9-1 Indianapolis Colts. This game, of course, is on ESPN. The Chargers are a 4-point favorite, and where I see it, the over-under is set at 46.5 points. Some gambling trends before we go around and break it down. The Chargers are 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings in Indianapolis. The Chargers are 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 road games. And the underdog is 7-2-1 against the spread in the last 10 meetings between the two teams. The under is 4-1-1 in the last 6 meetings between the two. And the over is 5-1 in the Colts' last 6 Monday night games. I'll kick this one off. I like the Chargers to cover this one. I'll buy the 1.5, but I like what I'm seeing from the Chargers. I know they had a really poor offensive showing last week, which definitely did disappoint me from a fantasy standpoint. But that said, I think they're trending in the right direction. I think they're going to make the AFC playoffs as a wild card team. I think they're going in all the right directions, getting healthy. I think they're going to play well, and I do think they'll cover against the Colts team that I'm sure is devastated after last week's blown loss. Adam, do you see it the same way?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure, how Jeff Saturday gets his team motivated. And obviously, who's even really looking at Jeff Saturday as a coach of this team anymore? I mean, such an atrocious loss last week. I don't know how they bounce back. I'm in agreement with you. I think the Chargers can come in here and win this game. I'm not crazy about the line, but I do like the Chargers on the money line. A team that has to have a must win against a team that just had, obviously just gave up the biggest comeback in NFL history. So I think the Chargers and the money line play. The one interesting thing I did see, though, is Herbert's been throwing for a lot of yards in these last couple of games, but he's only had 2 touchdown passes in the last 3 games. So not a whole lot of touchdown passes going on for Herbert, but I think they move the ball enough and get the win in Indianapolis.
Lope, what are your thoughts on this one, the Monday night matchup between the Chargers and Colts?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with everyone. I think, as Adam said, I don't know if this team's going to get up for Jeff Saturday anymore. I don't know if Irsay's playing and hiring him was the tank for the year. If it's working, because I don't see the Colts winning this. I think you had the stat as well. 5 or the overs seems to be on the trend, so I'll lean that way. And as you said, as the Chargers get healthier, we see what they can be and what Herbert can be. So 4 points is nothing. Swallow that, and I think it's one of the strongest plays of the week.
Dennis, with Jonathan Taylor out for the rest of the year, some running backs that are available for the Colts that might be a good pickup off the waiver wire. But is there anyone from a DFS standpoint that you like in this matchup?
Well, let me give you full disclosure. In my the one league where I am still alive in the playoffs, I'm riding all sorts of Chargers. So I'm really hoping for Herbert, Eckler, and for Gerald Everett to have a big weekend. That being said, DFS-wise, I think Mike Williams, even with Indy's pass defense with respect to fantasy points allowed, he does seem to be the guy who's going to make the big play and get chunk yardage. He had 8 targets last week, so it didn't necessarily, and he only had 4 receptions, so it didn't translate statistically. But I think this could be the week we saw with Minnesota last week that Colts can definitely give up some yardage. So I think DFS-wise, I'd be pleased to go.
Appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you're following us on Butt Fumble Sports, at Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at Sports Fumble on Twitter. We put out content all the time to help you win in fantasy, help you cash your gambling tickets, and of course, just rant and talk about sports as much as we can. That's why we're here. Appreciate all of you guys for joining us. Want to make sure I shout out the contributors for this space. Adam at Spotter AJ does such a great job for us. Thank you so much, AJ, for your analysis. You cashed so many tickets for everybody. Want to also thank Dennis Teravainen. That's Dennis Terava for those on Twitter. Does a great job on our DFS. Make sure you're following us, and you can check out Dennis's DFS lineup for this week. And, of course, J Lope Dog, DAWG there. Lope does a great job checking out all these games, and like me, follows a lot of the trends, puts out some great takes. Appreciate all of you guys. Know you put in time to be able to not only join the space, but give some great analysis for all of our listeners. So appreciate the efforts you guys make. And, of course, big shout out to Bleece. Couldn't do this without you, Bleece, and appreciate all that you do for us. Make sure you're following us at ButtFumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at Sports Fumble on Twitter. We love engaging with the audience, so if you have questions, takes, picks, or of course, if you just want to rant with us, we're always around for it. So make sure you're following us. We're going to switch over and go answer some fantasy football questions. Make sure you're following us at ButtFumble Sports on TikTok so you can ask your question. Thank you so much for joining us, and good luck in your NFL Week 16. Hopefully you win your fantasy matchup and cash your tickets. Good luck, and talk to you soon.